Alright, so it's April 17th. Let me just run through a few things that happened today. Trump says Iran agreed to hand over its nuclear material, which he keeps calling nuclear dust for some reason. Iran hasn't confirmed that, by the way. The Pentagon chief quoted Pulp Fiction during a prayer service, thinking it was the Bible. The Pope just called out a handful of tyrants in a very pointed speech, and the US is basically running out of missile interceptors after this war. So let me break this down. The first topic, Trump's nuclear dust claim. So here's what Trump announced on Thursday. He says Iran has agreed to hand over its enriched uranium, the stuff that could potentially be used for a nuclear weapon. He says this material got buried underground when US B 2 bombers attacked Iranian nuclear facilities last year, and now, according to him, Iran is ready to just give it back. But here's the thing, Iran has not confirmed this at all. No official statement, no nothing. And here's what makes this funny or sad, depending on how you look at it. Iran has been saying for years that they don't want nuclear weapons. They have a religious decree against it. They've even offered before to send their enriched uranium to a third country, Russia, Pakistan, whoever. This isn't new. But Trump is presenting it like it's this massive breakthrough, like Iran finally caved. Meanwhile, experts are just sitting there going, they offered this before the war even started. So, yeah, big announcement, not really a big deal. The next topic, why Trump is rushing, the real reason. And this brings me to why Trump is in such a hurry to declare victory because honestly, time is not on his side. Asian markets are starting to feel the pain from this oil blockade. Japan has reserves, sure, but the Philippines, Malaysia, South Korea, they don't. Their oil is not flowing. And once those countries start panicking, once their economies start shaking, it will hit US markets too. That's just how global finance works. So Trump is trying to keep oil prices calm by constantly saying we're close to a deal, we're making progress. But here's the truth, the oil is not flowing, the blockade is leaking. And the longer this goes on, the worse it gets. Plus, he has the World Cup coming up and midterm elections. He cannot afford an economic crisis right now, so he's spinning hard. Now, the forced ceasefire in Lebanon. On Thursday, Trump announced a 10-day ceasefire between Israel and Lebanon. Great, right? Peace in the region. Except here's the kicker, Israel's own prime minister reportedly found out about the ceasefire from Trump, not the other way around. He didn't negotiate it, he didn't agree to it beforehand. Trump just announced it and Bibi had to go along. And here's the other problem, the ceasefire doesn't include Hezbollah. Nobody even asked them, so they can keep fighting if they want to. Meanwhile, Israeli forces are staying in what they call a buffer zone in southern Lebanon, and they're still demolishing villages. There's video going around of schools being turned into rubble. So it's not really a ceasefire, it's a political move to remove Iran's excuse for blocking the Strait of Hormuz. Iran has been saying they won't open the strait until Israel stops attacking Lebanon. So Trump just declared unilaterally that the attacks have stopped, problem solved. Except they haven't actually stopped. Now, Hexet quotes Pulp Fiction for real. The US Secretary of Defense, the guy in charge of the entire American military, held a prayer service at the Pentagon this week, and he decided to read a scripture passage to bless the troops. But here's the thing, the passage he read wasn't from the Bible, it was from Pulp Fiction. He quoted Samuel L. Jackson's character word for word, the famous Path of the Righteous Man monologue. He changed a few words, downed aviator instead of righteous man, my call sign is Sandy 1 instead of my name is the Lord, but it was Pulp Fiction. And he presented it as if it was from Ezekiel. The Pentagon's response? They doubled down. They said the prayer was obviously inspired by Pulp Fiction, but it's still a reflection of the Bible verse. The Vatican has already criticized him for using religion to justify war. Hexet is also facing impeachment for abuse of power and war profiteering. So there's that. The next topic is the blockade is leaking badly. Now, the US keeps saying the blockade is working. They say 14 ships have turned back. They say they're enforcing it. But here's what they're not telling you: multiple ships have successfully passed through the Strait of Hormuz to Iranian ports. Two large tankers used routes approved by Iran, not the US. And the US Navy hasn't stopped a single ship, not one. They've issued warnings over the radio. They've told ships to turn around. Some have. But the ones that keep going, they just go. No boarding, no confrontation, nothing. Why? Because if the US actually stops an Iranian ship, Iran will close the Red Sea. The Houthis will start attacking tankers again. And then the US has two blocked straits instead of one. So the blockade is basically political theater. It's meant to look tough without actually causing a bigger war. Now, the Pope versus the tyrants. Meanwhile, the Pope is in Africa, Cameroon specifically, and he's not holding back. He gave a speech on Thursday where he said, and I'm quoting, "The world is being ravaged by a handful of tyrants." Now, he didn't name names, but everyone knows who he's talking about. This comes right after Trump attacked him on social media, calling him weak and saying he only became Pope because he's American. The Pope also condemned leaders who manipulate religion for military gain. That's a direct response to Hexet and his Pulp Fiction prayer service. He said, "Woe to those who manipulate religion and the very name of God for their own military, economic, and political gain, dragging that which is sacred into darkness and filth." Pretty strong words. And here's the interesting part: the Pope is actually more popular than Trump among American Catholics. Polls show that. So Trump attacking the Pope might not be the smartest political move. Now, the next topic is the US is running out of missiles. And this is actually the most important thing you need to know. The US is running out of missile interceptors. A Pentagon officially testified to Congress this week that the US and its allies used thousands of interceptors during the first 16 days of the war. THAAD, Patriot, Arrow, David Sling, all of them are close to empty. The US only produces about 100 THAAD interceptors per year. Each one costs up to $15 million. At that rate, it will take years to rebuild the stockpile. Think about what that means. If another war breaks out, not just with Iran, but anywhere, the US might not have enough missiles to defend its bases or its allies. And this is probably the real reason Trump is so desperate for a deal. He can't afford to keep fighting. The arsenal is running on empty. Okay, a couple of other things happened today that I want to mention quickly. Russia's Foreign Minister Lavrov said that the crisis in the Persian Gulf is fundamentally changing the security situation across all of Eurasia. That's a big deal because it means Russia sees this as an opportunity to expand its influence while the US is distracted. Pakistan is stepping up again. The Prime Minister welcomed the Lebanon ceasefire and said he hopes it leads to renewed US-Iran talks. Pakistan has been the mediator all along, and they're not giving up. A Pakistani delegation just visited Tehran. Another round of talks might happen this weekend. And China is still testing the blockade. Ships connected to Iran are still moving. The US isn't stopping them. The message is pretty clear. The blockade works on paper, not on water. Okay, so here's the biggest news of the day, and it literally broke just a few hours ago. Iran just announced that the Strait of Hormuz is completely open for all commercial vessels. For the first time in weeks, oil tankers can actually get out of the Gulf. The Iranian foreign minister posted this on social media. He said, and I'm quoting, "In line with the ceasefire in Lebanon, the passage for all commercial vessels through the Strait of Hormuz is declared completely open for the remaining period of the ceasefire." And here's the proof. Three Iranian oil tankers carrying 5 million barrels of crude have already left. They loaded before the ceasefire and just passed through. This is confirmed by tanker tracking data. Trump responded immediately. He wrote, "Thank you" in all caps on Truth Social. He said the strait is fully open and ready for business. But here's where it gets weird. Trump also said in the same post that the US naval blockade against Iran will remain in full force until a final deal is done. So the strait is open, but Iran is still blockaded. Oil prices plunged more than 10% on this news. London insurers just launched a $1 billion war cover facility for ships going through the strait. So the market believes this is real. The big question is, how long will it last? Iran says this is only for the remaining period of the ceasefire. So if the ceasefire collapses, the strait closes again, and the US blockade is still there. So this is progress, but it's not a permanent solution. Alright, so let me wrap this up. Trump says Iran is handing over its nuclear material. Iran hasn't confirmed it. He's rushing because Asian oil supplies are running out and his missile stockpile is almost empty. The Lebanon ceasefire is more about politics than peace. It's designed to remove Iran's excuse for blocking the strait. The Pentagon chief quoted Pulp Fiction at a prayer service, and the Vatican is not happy. The blockade is leaking, ships are getting through, and the US isn't stopping them. The Pope just called out a handful of tyrants in a very pointed speech, and the US is basically out of missiles. Plus, Russia is watching and waiting. Pakistan is still mediating, and China is still testing the blockade. And the most important news today is the Strait of Hormuz has been opened. We'll see for how long. So, yeah, that's where we are. I'll be back with more updates when things change.